Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a seedling, actually plant tour of all my impatiens. So let's go. I was planning on doing a full seedling tour of all the plants that I started from seed indoors earlier this year, basically during the winter months. And honestly, I kind of felt like the impatiens needed their own video. I am so proud of how the impatiens are looking, and I really wanted to just highlight them in this video. As you know, I am all about gardening on a budget. That is so important to me. That's really the core of my channel. And I love sharing what I do with all of you. I made a video before showing you my process for collecting the seeds off of an impatiens plant. I'm going to put a link to that video down below, but it's very simple to collect your own seeds from impatiens. And that is how I started all of these impatiens. And I don't mind having a whole mix of impatient colors. I like the fact that you actually can make your own colors, in fact. And I just think that looks so beautiful. So when I collect my own seeds, I just throw them all in a bag and I let nature take over. I was trying to count up how many plants I had here. There are 8 trays, and each tray has 62 plants in it. And then there's a partial tray there. So all I know is there are so many plants here for me to play with, and I'm very excited about that. Here where I live, there is quite a bit of shade in my yard. There are some sunny patches, but there's a lot of shade. And I always struggle with what to plant. And I really love the impatiens. I think that they really pop in those shady areas. And even in the partial sun areas, they do really well here where I live. Now, I've been babying these plants for a long time indoors. And in fact, I just brought them out recently just to start hardening them off. And while they were indoors, they had solid bottom trays underneath them, which allowed me to bottom water them. It allowed me to fertilize them. And I just gave them Miracle Grow, a very weak strength of Miracle Grow. And I gave that fertilizer once a week just to make sure my plants stayed nice and healthy. I know that some of you have also tried growing your own impatiens from seed, and a few of you have struggled with it. And one thing that I wanted to do in today's video was also show you my process for taking cuttings off of an impatiens plant and rooting them to make your own plants. I've done that in the past as well. It is a great way to propagate impatiens. I used to just buy a 6-pack from the nursery, and then I would start taking cuttings off of it and rooting them in water. And I would turn 6 plants into 12 plants, 12 plants into 24 plants, you name it. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to be showing you some cuttings that I had taken about a week and a half ago, and they already have roots on them because they root very quickly. And then together we're going to take some more cuttings, and I'll just show you my process on what to do with those cuttings afterwards. As the season progresses, I will definitely bring you along and show you where I'm going to be planting all of these impatiens. And I'll be sure to do garden tours just to give you updates on how everything's looking. This will be my first year planting them directly out in my landscape. Normally, I would plant them in hanging baskets, window boxes, containers. But this year, I really want to have them out in my landscape as well. And I've put down drip irrigation in quite a few areas where my lawn ends and where the woods begin. And I'll be putting a lot of these impatiens right towards the front of my flower beds. And I think they're going to look really pretty there. So before we start the process with the cuttings, I'm going to take you in for a closer look just so you can see how beautiful these impatiens are looking. I just love all the different colors. And normally when I garden, I like to put light colors together. But when it comes to these beauties, no, I am all set. I will very happily mix them all together, and I just think it looks really nice that way. So what did you think of those beauties? I absolutely love them. I think they look gorgeous, and I can't wait to plant them out. My average last frost date is May 15th, which is right around the corner. So pretty soon they're going to be out in the landscape in different pots and containers. So when it comes to propagating impatiens, either these type of impatiens, which are called beacon impatiens, or even New Guinea impatiens, they are so easy to propagate from cuttings. And we're going to start with some cuttings that I took recently. Now, I really didn't need any more plants, but I wanted to show you my process for taking the cuttings because that's how I used to do it. Before I started growing them from seed, I used to just get a few plants and just keep taking cuttings and making more plants that way. And seeing that some of you might not want to grow them from seed, I figured it's also important to show you how to propagate impatiens using cuttings. You can see here, I just have a small little vase, and you can use a glass, a jar. I like to use something that's clear so I can actually see what's going on with the roots. And this is just regular tap water. I don't have any chlorine in my water. And I recommend you don't use water that's heavily chlorinated. And I've been changing the water in this every 1 to 2 days. That's very important. You want to make sure that you're keeping the water nice and fresh. And when it comes to the roots, I like to make sure there's a fair amount of roots on here. But I also don't want a ton of roots. I just want just enough. And I'll show you how many roots are on these cuttings. And I'm noticing that one of the cuttings has a bud on it. Normally though, when you take your cuttings, you make sure you remove all the flowers, all the buds. And normally if you see some new buds forming or new flowers forming, you want to remove those so that the plant is putting all its energy into the roots. I'm going to take you in for a closer look so you can look at these cuttings and look at the roots, and then I'm going to just show you my quick process for potting them up. So again, here's just a small little glass vase, and I had only taken 2 cuttings, and these cuttings were taken about 1.5 weeks ago. So be patient. It takes a little bit of time, but eventually your cuttings will root. And here's the second cutting. And the roots are not as big as the other cutting, but that's okay. We can still work with this. I just have a small little 6 cell pack, and what I put in here was pre-moistened potting mix. And then I just used a pen, and I made a hole that goes to the bottom so that the cutting can fit inside of each of those holes that we made there. And all we're going to do is we're going to take this cutting and we're going to put it inside of this hole. And you want to make sure that you put the soil around the base of the plant and push down. And at this time, I do see a small little bud forming. I'm going to remove that. And normally I don't like to keep my cuttings in direct light at this point because they're a little bit shocked from coming out of the water. So I would put it in a little bit more of a shadier location. With this cutting here, you can see it's forming a couple of buds. So we're going to remove the buds. I don't have any leaves touching the soil, but if I did, I would remove any bottom leaves. And that's it. So now what's going to happen is this plant is going to get placed in a shadier location. I'll make sure that it doesn't fully dry out, but I also don't want to oversaturate it and rot those roots. But otherwise, these 2 plants are just going to continue growing and getting bigger. You can see that these plants are ready to go in the ground. In fact, the roots are almost coming out of the pots. They'll be okay. They still have to wait a few more weeks. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a couple of cuttings off of this. You want to use something sharp, and this is a tool that I just have in my house, and it's nice and sharp. You can use some sort of a blade. I normally don't like to use scissors because I don't want to crush the stem, but the big thing is to make sure that it's sharp and also that you've sterilized your cutting instrument because you don't want to carry any disease. When it comes to taking your cutting, you want to make sure that it's somewhere between 2 to 4 inches tall. It really should be as tall as the jar or the glass that you're using. And so a couple of these pieces right here are a good size. And you can see that right here, there's leaves here, that's a leaf node. And then there's another little leaf node down here. So we're just going to take the cutting down below here. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bud. It's also important to make sure you remove the bottom leaves. You do not want any leaves down inside the water. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this as well. And that's a nice cutting. You want to make sure you have at least 1 set of leaves. And I'm going to go ahead and put our cutting in the water. And notice again, there are no leaves below the water level. However, there are at least 1, if not 2 sets of leaves above the water level. Let's go ahead and take one more cutting. And there's our second cutting. I really hope you enjoyed this short but sweet video. I'm planning on making more videos similar to this one, just to kind of get to the point on something that I've done, for example, grow impatiens from seeds, give you an update on how they're looking, some of my tips or tricks on making them a successful looking plant, and then basically what's next in terms of putting them out in my yard or when it comes to propagating the plant. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. That way I know to make more videos like this. And if you haven't already, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That really helps my channel out. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.